Hey, so I've been working on a feature called Reactive Query Fields, which, if you're familiar with Joist, we have reactive fields that are columns in the database that Joist will watch for writes that invalidate the value and then auto get them recalced. So, because Joist is an ORM, at least if your writes go through all of the entities, it can figure out if you've changed one field, what else needs to be recalculated. Move my camera down just a little bit. But the way the reactive fields work today is that they, once they're invalidated, they pull the whole object graph into memory as if they're doing a populate, right? So let's look at something like, I'm sure author has one, because our test author has a little bit of everything. So here's a test author where a reactive field where the author is going to count the number of public reviews, that it's books, and through the books, through the reviews, and it's also going to filter on some of them to see which reviews are public. But when this lambda is called, all of this data is in memory, the books collection, reviews collection, and that's usually fine. You can flat map through things, everything's synchronous and really pretty pleasant, and do whatever kind of complicated business logic you want. The downside, of course, is that it needs to be in memory. So what the query field is that it uses the same reactivity tracking. So we're going to have a publisher that counts pretty similar, number of book reviews. But what's going to be different is we actually pass two reactive hints. The first one is the hint that will actually be loaded into memory. For this, we don't really need anything. We just need the ID of the publisher. But you could put a few things here if you needed the publisher name or something like that. Ideally, this first hint would be a small set of data. And then the second hint is data that will, if it changes, will trigger this publisher's column to be recalculated, but not actually loaded into memory. So like if I look at this reactive field, I mean, it's kind of tiny, but you can tell that only the ID is available. I can't actually do p.authors or anything like that. Now, since the data is not in memory, I have to go somewhere else. I have to use a database query to calculate it, which is fine. I'm using emFindCount, which just uses a database query. Also happens to be batch safe. If we had 100 publishers inserted all at once, Joist would calc all 100 book review fields and would call this lambda 100 times, which could turn into 100 SQL calls, but findCount will batch for you. So that's great. But it issues a SQL call, which is cool. This did actually end up requiring a little bit more surgery because it issues a SQL call that's going to do a select. If our entity manager has any work in progress changes, that are in memory, like new books or new book reviews, the SQL query is not going to call those. So we had to do some surgery on the entity manager flush such that, unlike how Joist usually works, it usually runs all the hooks and runs all the recalculations and then just does inserts and updates, and then it's done. This will actually do the inserts and updates and then do a little bit more. It realizes that, wait, I've got these reactive queries floating around, so it will actually defer calculating reactive queries until after the SQL inserts and updates have been pushed back into the database. So, if we look at some tests for what that looks like, here's a really simple test of creating a brand new publisher with 2 brand new book reviews. And then doing the flush, you can see that it does actually get it right. And it does this by first doing inserts for all 3 of these entities to get them into the database, but then realizing that reactive query needs calculated, so it runs it. And then we'll actually do another update. So it's technically doing an insert and then an update of the publisher, just because that's just kind of has to be how it works. There's another test showing how the recalc works. And then the final test is kind of cool. It's showing how, so publisher is our guy that had the reactive query field. I went ahead and publisher group is just it's a parent of publishers to test things. but publisher group has a old school reactive field. This is not a query one, but it's showing how an old school reactive field can depend on a another field that is a reactive field and get calculated correctly, right? So if we go look at our dependent reactive fields test, we're going to, we've got some data in the database that is all fine. Load a book, create a new book review. So, we've not touched publisher or publisher group at all. We're just loading a book, creating a book review, and flushing. And then behind the scenes, Joist is doing the right thing to first, insert the book reviews into the database so the SQL can see them, and then recalc the publisher number of book reviews now that it can run the database query, and then realize that there is also one more downstream thing to do of whoever's watching number of book reviews, which is the publisher group number of book reviews. Go ahead and run that too. So yeah, it's working. I need to potentially, the wrinkle right now is that when you call entity manager flush, it will actually, for entities like this publisher that are inserted and then also updated, it will, right now it's calling the hooks twice on that publisher. And I'm kind of going back and forth on whether that is more correct behavior because we did do an insert and then we did do an update, or if we should fall back on current behavior, which is this mental model that hooks are run once per entity per flush, which I think we can do, and that's probably what I'll change it to do, but just happens to not be what it's doing right now. So probably we'll change that before this lands, but otherwise kind of coming along nicely. And yeah, that's it.